I was standing at the entrance of my wedding reception when my parents walked through the door uninvited. My mother was carrying a gift. My father had his hand on my sister's shoulder. They hadn't spoken to me in 8 years. They'd told me not to come home, because my sister didn't want me there. And now, on the most important day of my life, they expected to be welcomed like nothing had happened. What they didn't know was that my grandmother had already told me everything, and I was about to make sure everyone in that room knew the truth. My name is Emily and I'm 31 years old. I have a younger sister named Rachel who's 28. Growing up, Rachel was the golden child. Everything she wanted, she got. Every mistake she made was excused. Every accomplishment I had was diminished to make room for hers. My parents didn't just favor her. They erased me to prioritize her comfort. When I was 23 and Rachel was 20, I came home for Thanksgiving. I'd been living in another city for 2 years, working as a junior accountant, trying to build a career. I was excited to see my family. I thought maybe things would be different now that we were adults. I was wrong. The night I arrived, Rachel pulled my parents aside. I heard them talking in the kitchen. She said she didn't feel comfortable with me there. That my presence made her anxious. That she needed the holidays to be a safe space. My mother came out and told me it would be better if I stayed at a hotel. I asked why. She said, "Your sister is going through a lot right now. She needs us." I said, "What about me?" She said, "Emily, you're older, you can handle this. Rachel can't." I left. I spent Thanksgiving alone in a hotel room eating takeout. That was the beginning of 8 years of exile. The first time my parents chose Rachel over me in a way that felt permanent. I was 24. It was Christmas. I'd asked if I could come home. My mother said Rachel doesn't think it's a good idea. She's still working through some things. I asked what things. My mother said, "She feels like you overshadow her, that you make everything about yourself." I said, "I haven't been home in a year. How am I making anything about myself?" My mother said, "Emily, you don't understand. Rachel is sensitive. We need to protect her." I hung up. I spent Christmas alone. Again, the second time I was 26. My grandmother, my father's mother, was in the hospital. She'd had a stroke. I got the call from my aunt, not my parents. I drove 6 hours to the hospital. When I walked into the waiting room, my parents were there with Rachel. My mother saw me and her face went cold. She pulled me aside and said, "You shouldn't be here. Rachel is very upset right now. Your presence will make things worse." I said, "Grandma is in the ICU. I'm not leaving." My mother said, "If you stay, Rachel will leave. And we need her here. She needs us." I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I left. I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandmother before she slipped into a coma. She died 3 days later. I wasn't told until after the funeral. The third time I was 28. I'd been promoted at work, senior accountant. It was a huge deal for me. I'd worked my ass off for it. I called my parents to tell them. My father answered. I said, "Dad, I got promoted." He said, "That's great, Emily. Listen, I need to go. We're helping Rachel move into her new apartment." I said, "Can I come help?" He said, "I don't think that's a good idea. Rachel specifically said she doesn't want you there." I said, "Why? What did I do?" He said, "Emily, I don't know. But we have to respect her boundaries." I hung up and cried for 2 hours. That's when I realized I didn't have a family anymore. I had people who shared my DNA and chose someone else. 2 years ago I met James. He's a software engineer. Kind, thoughtful, patient. He knew about my family situation from the beginning. I told him everything. He said, "They don't deserve you. But one day, you're gonna have a family that does." We got engaged after a year. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't invite them to the engagement party. I didn't ask for their blessing. I was done. My wedding was planned for the following spring. Small ceremony, close friends, James's family, and my grandmother. My father's mother, who'd survived the stroke and spent the last 5 years in a nursing home. She was the only family I had left who actually cared about me. 3 weeks before the wedding, my grandmother called me. Her voice was shaky. She said, "Emily, I need to tell you something. Your parents called me. They want to come to your wedding." I said, "I didn't invite them." She said, "I know. But they heard about it from your aunt, and they're planning to show up anyway." I said, "Why?" She paused. Then she said, "Because Rachel told them she's ready to reconcile. That she wants to be part of your life again." I said, "What?" My grandmother said, "Emily, I need to tell you the truth. Rachel lied to them. For 8 years. She told them you didn't want to see them, that you were the one who asked for distance, that you needed space to work on yourself." They believed her. I couldn't breathe. I said, "What?" My grandmother said, "I confronted Rachel last month. I told her I knew the truth. She admitted it. She said she needed their attention, that she couldn't share them with you. That she convinced them you were the problem. Your parents never questioned it. They never reached out to you to ask if it was true. They just accepted her version." I asked my grandmother why she didn't tell me sooner. She said, "Because I thought they'd figure it out. I thought they'd see through her eventually. But they never did. And now they want to come to your wedding and pretend none of it happened. I hung up and called James. I told him everything. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want them to know the truth. But I don't want to give them the satisfaction of a private conversation where they can deny it or make excuses. James said, then let's do it publicly. At the wedding, I said how? He said we'll let them come. We'll seat them. And during the reception, you'll give a speech. You'll tell everyone exactly what happened. With proof. I said what proof? He said your grandmother. She's a witness. And if Rachel admitted it to her, we can get her to say it on record. James contacted a lawyer friend of ours, Michelle Torres. We explained the situation. Michelle said, this isn't a legal matter. But if you want documentation we can have your grandmother make a sworn statement. Not for court. Just for your records. To protect yourself in case they try to rewrite history again. My grandmother agreed. Michelle drafted a statement. My grandmother signed it. It detailed every conversation she'd had with Rachel. Every lie Rachel had told. Every time my parents had chosen to believe Rachel over asking me directly. It was 3 pages long, and it was damning. But I wanted more. I wanted Rachel to admit it herself. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to her. I texted her from a new number she wouldn't recognize. I said, hey, this is Emily. I heard you want to reconcile. Can we talk before the wedding? She responded within minutes. She said yes. I'd love that. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop 2 days before the wedding. I brought my phone. I set it to record. I put it in my purse, camera facing out. I wanted everything documented. Rachel showed up 15 minutes late. She looked the same. Blonde hair, perfect makeup, designer purse. She hugged me like we were old friends. She said, Emily, I'm so glad you reached out. I've missed you. I said, really? She said, of course. I know things have been hard, but I think we can move past it. I said, move past what? She looked confused. She said, you know, the distance, the years apart. I said, Rachel, why do you think we've been apart? She said, because you needed space. Because you told mom and dad you didn't want to see them. I looked at her, I said, I never said that. You did. Her face changed. She said, what are you talking about? I said, Grandma told me. You told mom and dad I didn't want to see them. That I needed space. That I was the one who wanted distance. You lied to them for 8 years. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Emily, I don't know what Grandma told you, but you're misunderstanding. I said, she confronted you. You admitted it. Rachel's face went red. She said, okay, fine. Yes, I told them that. But it wasn't a lie. You did need space. You were always so intense. So demanding. I was protecting them. I said, protecting them from what? She said, from you. From your drama. From your need to always be the center of attention. I stared at her. I said, I got a promotion and called to tell Dad. He said you didn't want me at your apartment. I came to the hospital when Grandma had a stroke and Mom told me to leave because you couldn't handle my presence. I spent 8 Christmases alone because you told them I didn't want to come home. Where's the drama in that? Rachel said, you're twisting everything. You always do this. You make yourself the victim. I said, I have a witness. Grandma signed a statement. Everything you said to her is documented. Rachel went pale. She said, you're recording this, aren't you? I didn't answer. She stood up. She said, you're insane. And she left. The day of the wedding, my parents showed up. They walked into the reception hall like they belonged there. My mother was carrying a wrapped gift. My father had his hand on Rachel's shoulder. Rachel looked nervous. I greeted them calmly. I said, I'm glad you came. My mother smiled. She said, we wouldn't miss this for the world. I said, great. I saved seats for you. I led them to a table near the front. Right next to my grandmother. My grandmother looked at them and didn't smile. My mother said, hi, Mom. My grandmother nodded. Didn't say a word. The reception went smoothly. Dinner, dancing, toasts, and then it was my turn to speak. James and I stood at the microphone. I thanked everyone for coming. I thanked James's family for welcoming me. And then I said, I want to take a moment to address my family. My parents, my sister. You're here today, and I'm grateful for that. But I need to say something I've needed to say for 8 years. I looked at them. My mother's smile was frozen. My father looked confused. Rachel looked like she wanted to disappear. I said, for 8 years, I was told not to come home. I was told my sister didn't want me there. I was told I needed space. I missed Thanksgivings, Christmases. I wasn't told when my grandmother had a stroke. I wasn't invited to her funeral. I spent nearly a decade believing my family didn't want me. But 3 weeks ago, I found out the truth. My sister lied to you. She told you I didn't want to see you. That I was the one who needed distance. And you believed her. Without ever asking me if it was true. My mother stood up. She said, Emily, this isn't the time. I said, no. This is exactly the time. Because you're here uninvited, acting like nothing happened. And I need everyone to know why. I pulled out a folder. I handed copies to the tables around me. I said, this is a sworn statement from my grandmother. It details every lie my sister told. Every conversation where she admitted she wanted me gone. And this, I held up my phone. is a recording from 2 days ago, where Rachel admitted she lied to protect herself. That she told you I didn't want to see you because she didn't want to share your attention. My father's face went white. My mother started crying. Rachel stood up. She said, "You're making this up." I played the recording. Her voice filled the room. "'Kay, fine. Yes, I told them that, but it wasn't a lie. You did need space. You were always so intense. I was protecting them." The room was silent. My mother looked at Rachel. She said, "You told us she didn't want to come home." Rachel said, "I did what I had to do. You always loved her more." My father said, "We never loved her more. We just believed you when you said she asked for space." Rachel said, "Because she should have. She was always in the way." My grandmother stood up. She said, "Rachel, you're a liar. And you destroyed your sister's relationship with her parents because you were selfish." Rachel started crying. She said, "I needed them. You don't understand." My grandmother said, "Emily needed them too. And you took that from her." My parents left the reception early. They didn't take the gift. They didn't say goodbye. Rachel followed them out, still crying. I didn't stop them. I didn't chase them. I just stood there with James and my grandmother and the people who actually loved me. A week later, my mother called. She said, "Emily, we need to talk." I said, "There's nothing to talk about." She said, "We didn't know." I said, "You didn't ask. For 8 years, you didn't once reach out to me to verify what Rachel was telling you. You just accepted it." She said, "We're your parents. We love you." I said, "No, you love the idea of me that was convenient. The one that didn't conflict with Rachel." I hung up. My father sent an email. He said he was sorry, that they'd made a terrible mistake, that they wanted to make it right. I didn't respond. Rachel sent a text. She said, "I hope you're happy. You ruined our family." I blocked her number. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to any of them since. My grandmother visits once a month. She's the only family I need. People ask me if I regret exposing them at my wedding. If I feel guilty for humiliating them publicly. I don't. Because they spent 8 years letting me believe I wasn't wanted, and when I finally had proof of the truth, they still tried to deny it. They chose Rachel over me every single time. And at my wedding I chose myself. And I'd do it again.